Now, we've been talking throughout the show about the pivot points we've reached as a result of bin Laden's death. One of the biggest questions is whether torture did or did not work in this situation and what that means going forward. Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, chairwoman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, says officers got the necessary leads to find bin Laden without resorting to torture.
To the best of our knowledge, based on a look, none of it came as a result of harsh interrogation practices.
None of it. And Donald Rumsfeld, of all people, also says that waterboarding didn't lead to the capture of bin Laden.
It is true, as I understand it, that some information that came from normal interrogation approaches in Guantanamo did lead to information that was beneficial in this instance. But it was not harsh treatments, and it was not waterboarding.
There is not one person in the world who would be more motivated to say intelligence came from enhanced interrogations, but even he says it didn't. That's got to be clear enough, right? Nope, of course not. Still, despite all this, right-wingers are claiming Bush's policies on waterboarding did play a role.
So for those who say that waterboarding doesn't work, to say that it should be stopped and never used again, we got vital information which directly led us to bin Laden. It was during the interrogation of colleague Sheikh Mohammed through waterboarding that this information was learned.
Wrong again, as usual with Peter King. When does he ever get it right? Of course, the GOP has the advantage of being the party that is indifferent to facts. You can make any argument you like as long as you don't have to back it up with any evidence. Just listen to the waterboarding king himself.
All I know is what I've seen in the newspaper at this point, but it wouldn't be surprising if, in fact, that program produced results that ultimately contributed to the success of this venture.
Of course, again, completely not true. To the rest of us, this is abundantly clear. It was not waterboarding or torture that got us this information. So is it possible that this is a good time to reconsider the whole concept of torture and whether America should stoop to such despicable tactics? We certainly think it is. Let's bring in Dahlia Lithwick. She's senior editor at Slate. And she actually wrote an article that urges Obama to close Guantanamo Bay and to call off harsh interrogation methods of terrorist suspects. Dahlia, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's talk about what you think are the right moves right now and why you think this is a good time to make those moves. What do you think the president should do?
Well, I think the president should do what he campaigned to do all along, which is close Guantanamo, do away with secret trials, do away with military commissions in lieu of Article 3 trials. In other words, restore us to the state of the rule of law pre-9/11. So if you agree that 9/11 was not, in fact, an existential threat that meant that we hid all our legal systems away and created new ones, now's a good time to reinstate the legal regimes we hid away and say, okay, this is a symbolic end to a 10-year period of temporary legal insanity, and let's go back to the way things were and pretend it never happened at all.
Well, that would be going back to how we had America, which is America. It was constitutional. We didn't do torture. We were a light onto the world, and we were proud, and that was part of what made us great. Now, unfortunately, the country has changed so much since then that the president couldn't even close Guantanamo. And it seems, Dahlia, that they're impervious to facts. Intelligence says, no, we didn't get it from waterboarding. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed apparently gave up the information under normal standard practices, but you just can't get it through the knuckleheads in Congress. I mean, the president did try to close Guantanamo, and they didn't let him. So how do we proceed going forward?
Well, I think, I think we need to be very, very careful about who the source is of this new torture hysteria. It's not an accident that the calls to reclaim the beauty of waterboarding and to fall in love yet again with the idea of torture are all coming from the people whose names were on those torture memos who were in the room when they were debating this, with the exception of Donald Rumsfeld. So it's not an accident that it's John Yoo coming forward and saying, hey, look, torture really worked. Imagine if we'd Mirandized these these guys. It's not an accident that it's Dick Cheney saying, hey, you know, maybe some of the vital information did come from them. So I think we really want to cabin those people and say, look, they have a dog in this fight. They need to prove that what they did saved the country. But let's call that a kind of lunatic fringe and move on. And I think with the exception of a handful of torture apologists who do have a dog in this fight, who do have some stake in the idea that America is a country that abandons the Geneva Conventions and tortures at random, most right-thinking Americans, to the extent that they think about it at all, think that that was an error. So I think we really want to just isolate the folks who are turning this into a referendum on torture and say it's not a referendum on torture. We know as a factual matter that torture didn't lead to this information, as you pointed out. But as a completely normative matter, we also know we shouldn't torture. It doesn't work. It leads to bad information. It leads us to chase false leads. So bracket the handful of people who have a stake in trying to prove otherwise. The rest of us need to move on.
And by the way, what does this say about us when we say, yeah, we'd like to be like Saudi Arabia and Syria and all these other countries that do torture? That isn't what America is supposed to be. So this is a great opportunity. And look, I've given the president a world of credit on getting bin Laden. I'm going to do it again a little later in the show. But as far as pivoting here, do you really think he's going to take the opportunity to do that pivot and give us the change that he promised during the campaign?
Well, I think we want to be really careful on the issue of torture. It's true he's failed to live up to his promise on Guantanamo. He's failed to keep his promise about trying Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and the other architects of 9/11 in New York in a trial, in a domestic trial. He hasn't failed us on torture. It's really important to be clear that he has gone back to the guidelines in the Army Field Manual. We don't torture. He says we don't have black sites. So let's give him credit for the things that he has done right. And I agree with you. This is a moment to say, push harder on the things he hasn't been able to fulfill. One of them is Guantanamo. One of them is secret trials. One of them is military commissions in lieu of real trials. Those are the places we have to push hard. And I agree with you. This is the moment to pivot. This is the moment to say, as a symbolic matter, the war on terror ended this weekend. Let's go back to America the way America was. Let's go back to the America that the rest of the world looked to as a beacon of the rule of law.
And Dahlia, you're absolutely right. Give him credit on stopping torture, etc. But to add to your list, indefinite detentions, warrantless wiretapping, we've got to turn all of that around. It's a big slate of to-do lists, but this is the perfect time to do them. So Dahlia Lithwick of Slate, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.